making the sector a leading pathway for equitable economic mobility. They're also critical to help our city transition to green energy. However, our city has lacked a cohesive strategy to cultivate industrial business growth, which has hampered their ability to thrive. With the passage of this legislation, our city can properly invest in the industrial sector, unlocking doors of opportunity for New Yorkers and creating pathways for success. Councilmember Farias turned the idea into concrete legislation and carried it forward. And with that, I invite her up to the podium to give remarks on this legislation.
Thank you so much, Speaker. As Justin Timberlake likes to say, we are bringing sexy back with these bills. My legislation, Introduction 1012A, will require our city agencies to develop a comprehensive citywide industrial development strategic plan for manufacturing and industrial business zones. This kind of policy initiative has not been carried out by New York City since 1993, nor have zoning changes been made for industrial zones since 1961. This bill is filling in a decades-long gap and offering overdue support to a vital sector of our economy. When we protect industrial business zones and industrial jobs, we are also protecting our working class families, unionized workforce, and businesses that boost our communities. This strategic plan will ensure that we are both growing the workforce and that our industrial zones make sense and are protective of our existing communities. The industrial workforce runs this city, and our workers and the spaces they work in each and every day deserve support from our citywide leaders. The legislation also follows a national trend set by President Biden to strengthen domestic workforces, supply chains, and the green economy in packages like the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Deal. Really, this is a moment for New York City to be ahead of the curve and catch up to the curve and lead on an issue our president has made a priority for this country. It's why I'm excited to say that we are finally giving this issue the attention it deserves and making a huge impact on our communities, including in my own backyard for Zariga's IBZ. I'm proud to support the future of our industrial workforce for generations, grow our local economies, and support our emerging green economy with this critical legislation. Thank you to Speaker Adams for your leadership and to all the co-sponsors on this bill for their leadership. As the first Bronxite and Latino to chair the Committee on Economic Development, I'm proud to get this win for workers in my district and across this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Member. Finally, we will be voting on the very sexy intro 1031A.
It's the trend.
It's the trend today, sorry guys. My Fair Housing Framework legislation that will help the efforts to address our city's housing crisis through the lens of equity. The bill would require the city agencies to create and submit a fair housing assessment and plan every 5 years. The assessment would include a citywide fair housing plan that would be coordinated with the requirements of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Following this, the city would produce an assessment of long-term citywide housing needs, 5-year housing production targets for each local community district level, and a strategic equity framework that would report on the progress made towards the housing targets, as well as the obstacles and strategies for achieving them. The plan would also focus on the production and preservation of affordable housing, anti-displacement resources, and neighborhood investments for underserved communities. The city would produce annual reports on its progress. This legislation will help our city's efforts to stem the housing crisis by facilitating increased housing production that is equitable and focused on the needs of all New Yorkers by building and preserving more affordable housing and identifying the investments needed to promote opportunity in our neighborhoods. It will serve as an important tool of transparency and accountability to help us address the housing crisis with clarity about the obligations and needs of every community district. We need every neighborhood to do its fair share to confront the city's housing crisis. Through our collective efforts, we can invest holistically in the strength of our neighborhoods and successfully address the housing crisis. I'm proud to advance legislation that prioritizes equity in housing production, which represents the Council's continued commitment to confront the city's housing crisis. At the end of the day, this legislation is about building more housing and uplifting New Yorkers to give working families across 5 boroughs a real chance at building their legacy in the city. This is the reality that New Yorkers deserve, and one that the Council is determined to realize through our fair housing framework and other efforts to spur housing production and affordability. This concludes our stated agenda, and with that, we'll take on-topic questions first.
On-topic questions? Off-topic questions?
Nice.
You don't want to touch it.
I know.
So,
Yes.
Speaker,
Hi, Ethan.
Since the last stated meeting, the mayor has definitely had some big developments. His fundraisers, home was searched by the FBI. His phone and other devices were taken by the FBI last week. Was just wondering if you had a reaction generally to it, and then also what you think about the idea of him being distracted by a long investigation into him and his campaign.
Well, Ethan, I really thank you for the question, but it is an ongoing investigation, and I'm not going to be commenting on the ongoing investigation.
Are you concerned about him being distracted, though?
Am I concerned about him being distracted? Well, he's the mayor. I believe that he can continue to focus on the city's priorities.
There was supposed to be, Councilmember Lincoln, Russell's bill was supposed to pass today, H.R. 417, to speed up pipeline installation. But we heard that the administration, after originally supporting it, is no longer going to, and it's now held up. Do you know anything about that and why that is?
Well, we know that the bill is not going to be voted on today, and we're going to continue to work with the sponsor to move it forward because we need to work to move it forward. But it will not be voted on today.
What were the issues with it?
Well, I'm not really going to go into the issues. We just need to work on that particular legislation with the sponsor.
Okay.
What do you make of the mayor's comments yesterday that November budget modifications for tomorrow will contain extremely painful spending cuts across all city agencies? Is the council ready to block the mayor's modification?
Oh, thank you for that question. What we've heard publicly from the administration thus far doesn't really bode well for the capacity of city agencies to deliver essential services and administer key programming. We haven't really received any in-depth briefing yet, but we do expect it later on today. The council will have much more to say tomorrow, though, when the full November plan update is made public. But we've got serious concerns about potential cuts to city agencies and nonprofits that support this city so effectively and that this city relies on, as well as the exorbitant spending on for-profit companies that have been a really heavy part of the administration spending on asylum seekers. But we are waiting for that in-depth information once the full announcement is made.
And one thing that the Daily News learned recently is that apparently there will be a hiring freeze for NYPD Academy classes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We're going to continue to watch what comes out of or the results, of the budget issues. So that's something else that the council is going to be watching very closely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. For you, Speaker, for anyone else who wants to weigh in, Floyd Bennett Field is open. Families are moving in there. Some have arrived there and not stayed because of the conditions that they've seen there. Are you concerned about those conditions, and have you visited any of the tent city shelters, and sort of what are your thoughts on what you've seen wherever you have visited?
Yeah, thank you, Annie. I have visited, prior HERCs in the past. The Floyd Bennett Field situation was a little bit different because, as the council has always maintained, congregate settings are not appropriate for families with children, and the reaction from some of the new arrivals underscores that concern. It was raised by the council and by advocates as well. As to whether, any of the questions around closure or anything, we won't really make that determination, but if families aren't utilizing the location, then there should be serious consideration about its use for single adults, which is probably more equipped and appropriate for service.
And just what were the HERCs you visited?
We were at Randall's Island. That was the main HERC that we were at. Several different shelters. I don't know if you're aware, but my district actually does house probably the second highest number of shelters, probably even before the asylum seeker crisis. So,
What's the highest?
the highest would be Councilmember One's district in Astoria. Okay.
That'll be our last question. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Good to see you, Emily. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you.